You know, it's only been 24 hours since I have recorded a video talking about the markets. And in those 24 hours, a lot has happened. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit here. But I want to start off by saying if you're stressed in this particular market, if you don't know what's going to happen next and that bothers you, and the volatility and the price action is starting to get to you, this is why we invest in cryptocurrencies. If we wanted stability, if we wanted low volatility, we would invest in blue chip companies or we would invest in bonds. Even bonds are actually quite volatile recently, but that's aside from the point. If we want to invest because we want the higher returns, because we believe in the future, and because, let's be honest here, this market is much more exciting to invest in than any other market I've ever invested in, personally at least. If you're stressed by this current volatility and what's happening with altcoins and Bitcoin and it perplexes you and frustrates you, that means that the position sizing you have right now is inappropriate. Because I'll tell you right now, my altcoin positions, which are the majority of my crypto portfolio, they're all down right now, and by quite a bit. However, I'm not stressed. I'm excited about what's happening in the market right now because it's action. We haven't really seen a ton of action in cryptocurrencies recently, and we're seeing it now, and we might be at the time where there's this huge buy opportunity. So let's talk about what's going on in the markets right now, whether or not you should invest, and what is happening, what's causing the spike in Bitcoin. And to me, it all seems to be about Bitcoin Gold. We actually had a thread on the cryptocurrency Reddit that's talking about how Bitcoin Gold is a scam based off of the fact that it's been pre-mined, based off of the fact that the creators or the developers behind it are really sketchy. The website doesn't have a ton of information on it, really has no information. And if you go to the Wayback Machine, which takes snapshots of websites in history, you'll find that the website was in broken English and just really poor presentation. So a lot of information coming out about Bitcoin Gold and how it's a scam, blah, 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 blah. I can't confirm or deny whether or not this is true, but what I can point out is that the price action in Bitcoin right now does not care. And this should be really evidence to you that when we look at what happens on Reddit and what happens on YouTube and Twitter and all these other places, maybe as an aggregate they affect the market, but in general here, when you're talking about a cryptocurrency with a market cap of $75 billion, it's very difficult to move that cryptocurrency through fear. It's very difficult to move it through FOMO. It's very difficult to move it at all. So I just want to illustrate this real quickly because some people have accused me of price manipulation. They've accused YouTube of price manipulation. They've accused Reddit or Twitter and so on and so forth. When we're talking about Bitcoin in particular, it's very difficult to manipulate it. I just want to point that out quickly here because while other altcoins can be affected by all of those different platforms, Bitcoin in particular will do whatever Bitcoin wants to do. Whatever Mr. Market says, that's what's going to happen on that particular day. And what's happening on this particular day is we're seeing a spike in price despite all of the fear associated with Bitcoin Gold. What I want to point out about this, I talked about in my last video just 24 hours ago how I felt that holding through the Bitcoin Gold hard fork might be the best strategy because I thought everybody would be focused on the Bitcoin 2x hard fork. That was the one that a lot of politics are behind. There's a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of fighting going on between the people who are pro-Bitcoin, people who are pro-2x. There's a lot of debate there, and I felt that Bitcoin Gold was going to go under the radar and sort of act like the dividend that Bitcoin Cash did. However, now Bitcoin Gold is getting just as much, if not more hype than the Bitcoin 2x hard fork. And as a result of that, my thought process has somewhat changed. Now I'm a little bit less certain as to whether or not you should hold through the Bitcoin Gold hard fork. There's actually a number of scenarios in which we should consider here with the hard fork because we have one scenario where everybody holds through the hard fork, the majority of the market holds through it, and we see the value of Bitcoin Gold hold steady. Now, I think this is the least likely scenario. We're going to see Bitcoin Gold probably be fairly volatile after it hits the exchanges, so this is probably the least likely scenario. The second scenario is where everybody gets the Bitcoin Gold by holding through the hard fork, and they instantly sell the Bitcoin Gold, and then they buy Bitcoin. In this particular scenario, the combined market cap of the two of them really shouldn't change that much, right? Because the value of Bitcoin Gold goes down, but the value of Bitcoin goes up. Maybe in the short term, we see the overall market cap of Bitcoin go up. And then we have this third scenario, and this is the scenario I'm worried about. Everybody invests and holds through the hard fork because they expect the free money. And what happens after the distribution of Bitcoin Gold is everybody sells Bitcoin. Not just the Bitcoin Gold, but they also sell Bitcoin because they realize everybody else did the same thing. That's what I'm really worried about. Now, I expected that to happen with the Bitcoin 2x hard fork, but I did not expect that to happen with Bitcoin Gold. However, because all of this hype has started to come behind the Bitcoin Gold hard fork, I'm starting to worry about that. And if we look at altcoins here, you can see that it's a sea of red. With a few exceptions across the board, we are seeing altcoins down quite a bit. And I meant to provide an update in my last video talking about ARK. I did not do that, so now we're going to talk about it because a lot of you may be frustrated with me because I recommended purchasing at the 60,000 Satoshi level. Of course, that ended up being terrible advice because ARK is down quite a bit from the levels at which I suggested purchasing it. So what I want to point out now is whether or not I'm bullish, bearish, do I want to sell, do you buy at this level? At the moment, I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to set a limit order at roughly 40,000 Satoshi. You could consider going even a little bit lower than that if you are very skeptical about the altcoin market right now, if you expect a continued sell-off. Of course, it was kind of impossible to predict. I shouldn't say impossible, but I couldn't predict at the time that I made the video on ARK that we would see all altcoins sell off the way that they have. I mean, it's not just ARK that's down this amount, right? All cryptocurrencies aside from Bitcoin are down quite a bit. In fact, if I go to GDAX here, you can see that Ethereum is down a lot and Litecoin is down a lot. In fact, these two cryptocurrencies were down even more if you looked at it just an hour or two ago. So what I want to point out about all of this is that this could be a great opportunity to purchase altcoins for cheap. This is the time that you put in the lowball limit orders. If you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I promote the use of limit orders that are far below the market as a way to capture downward movements like these ones and really set it at really, really low support lines. You know, lines that you wouldn't expect to otherwise get filled. You know, I talked about in previous Litecoin videos that you should consider purchasing at around $41 or so. And now is not an unreasonable time to put that limit order in. The likelihood that it fills, I'm not really sure. But I will say that if Litecoin and other altcoins continue to sell off, it's not unreasonable. And if we look at it in the long term, I tend to think that all of the altcoins, there's going to be one of two scenarios that happen. Either A, we see Bitcoin continue upward and past $5,000. If we see that scenario happen, there should come a point where eventually altcoins catch up. That's what happened in mid-August. We saw this huge run-up in Bitcoin. Let me see if I can capture that for a moment here. I don't know if it'll go that far back. It kind of captures it. There was this huge run-up in the middle of August, right, that you're all familiar with. And all of the altcoins saw this depreciation here. But through the second half of August, we saw all of the altcoins start to appreciate against Bitcoin, right? And I'm only showing it with Litecoin and Ethereum here, but it happened with pretty much all of the altcoins. So they lagged against Bitcoin while it was having its run up, but then they appreciated against it towards the second half of the month when we ran up towards $5,000. Obviously, it's not going to happen towards this run up to 5,000, but we might see it happen if Bitcoin breaks 5,000 and starts running up towards 6,000. I imagine altcoins will catch up. The second scenario we might see is Bitcoin corrects massively following one of these hard forks. And if that happens, then I think you're going to be very happy to be invested in altcoins. I will tell you, I was exceptionally happy to be invested in altcoins when we saw this move downward in Bitcoin, because despite the move downward, I was breaking even for the majority of this. I mean, obviously I was down when we hit $3,000, but for the majority of this move downward, I was actually breaking even or only down by, say, 2.5% or so, despite Bitcoin going down this much, just because I was invested in altcoins that did well. Of course, that strategy didn't work very well in the first half of August, but it's not going to work well when we see this sector rotation into Bitcoin. All of this is to say, there's a lot of different scenarios that can play out right now, and I'm starting to be a little less certain about the Bitcoin Gold hard fork. It may not be the worst strategy in the world to sell off before the hard fork. Now, I know that sounds weird, but there's going to be a lot of hype behind this hard fork, regardless of whether or not it's called a scam like we see here. So in the end, this is the time that you want to pay attention to the markets the closest, or you want to take a break and sit back for 6 months. It depends on whether or not you're a trader or an investor. If you are someone that gets emotional and is not able to control the way they feel about the markets, like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, now is the time that you stop paying attention to YouTube channels, even mine, even though I benefit from your views. This is the time you cut off Reddit. This is the time you cut off reading about the news. This is the time you take a step back and you stop paying attention to cryptocurrencies for a few months and just let your positions hold. If you're a trader or you're somebody that doesn't get emotionally involved when it comes to trading or investing in cryptocurrencies, now you want to pay attention closer than ever, because you got to pay attention to what Mr. Market is telling you to determine what your next actions are going to be. Personally, I'm going to stay invested in altcoins rather than Bitcoin because I'm concerned about the health of the market right now. It just, again, it doesn't feel right to me. And that's my personal opinion. Of course, you have to do your own due diligence. I think we have a higher probability of seeing Bitcoin run up over the next 2 weeks or so, but I would not be surprised to see a sell-off following the Bitcoin Gold hard fork. As usual, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscription, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.